as we wrapped up the Revolutionary War, it have become obvious that that was the event, even though it took a really long time, that was the time in history, the actions in history that allowed the United States to become its own nation. But here's the thing. That focused mostly on the military actions, the fighting that was involved. There was another part that had to keep on going, and I referenced it a number of times when I pointed out how George Washington got his orders from the Continental Congress. For instance, when Congress told George Washington he needed to hold on to New York City, and even though that was not the greatest military decision, George Washington tried to follow those orders. That's part of why Nathan Hale was sent to spy in New York City and was hung. So there was a connection, some overlap between those military facts and the part that we're going to talk about now and focus more on, the idea of a government. Once the Revolutionary War was over, the military part was not nearly as important as the government. How we were going to keep the freedom that those battles and those huge sacrifices had won. And so this is where the focus begins then in the young United States. How did we keep this new freedom, and how did we turn into a nation instead of being taken over when we were little, kind of like a little baby nation? And it has to do with the idea of government and what makes the United States government so different from any government before it. So to lay the groundwork, when the Revolutionary War was being fought, the Continental Congress was the government part of the United States. And in order to make the rules for how they were supposed to govern, they wrote it down in a document called the Articles of Confederation. And this was the first federal government, the first government of all of the states in one spot. Now, this part's important. They had written up the Articles of Confederation as the Revolutionary War was coming to an end, and as we were looking forward to not having England make all the rules for us. And so those abuses of power that England had perpetuated on us, those laws and those taxes that the founders didn't feel like they had any say in making, that was really important to them when they were deciding how to make their own government. And so those years of living under the British rule made many Americans distrust, not trust government when it had a strong central power. They were pretty sure that if you give central government far away from the people, too much power, that it would take advantage of that and that it would take away the liberty that they had fought so hard to gain during the years of the Revolutionary War. As a result, the Articles of Confederation gave most of the powers to the governments of the states. And so that is going to set up some problems in the future. But there was one big success with the Articles of Confederation, and that has to do with the Northwest Ordinance. That's just the name of a law. It was passed in 1787 while the United States was ruled by the Articles of Confederation. The point of the Northwest Ordinance was to make a way for new territories to become states. What is a territory? Well, it tells you in the next sentence, even though the blue is drawing your attention to the word territory here. It doesn't always tell you a definition in the same sentence. Often you have to read on. Here's your definition. A territory is an area of land that belongs to a government, but it's not necessarily part of the nation that it belongs to. It doesn't have all the rights and privileges and responsibilities that go along with belonging to the nation. Now, you may remember that at the end of the Revolutionary War, the United States took up all the land from the Atlantic Ocean west to the Mississippi River. But the only part that had really been settled and governed itself was here along the Atlantic Ocean, the Atlantic coast. And so as people moved west, the Articles of Confederation realized they did not want to treat this area, these territories, like they had been treated by England. They wanted these territories to have a chance to have equal power with the rest of the states. And that was the point of the Northwest Ordinance. So here's some background of that section of land. First of all, after the American Revolution, the United States claimed all the land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River. That's because it said in the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War that this land was no longer belonging to Great Britain, that this land now was part of the United States. This land included a region called the Northwest Territory. And you can see from this smaller map why it would be considered the Northwest. See if I can get it in here. There we go. So if this is the original area of the United States, if you go north and west of the original territory, you hit this spot, the spot that is then shown in more detail in this map. And if you have difficulty doing today's homework assignment, you'll want to refer back to this spot in the video. So after the American Revolution, the United States claimed all land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River. This land included a region called the Northwest Territory. It is now part of the Middle West of the United States because it's in the middle part of the United States. The Northwest Territory included the future states of Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Illinois. Before, all right, so we've got a timeline here. Before this happened, before Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance, the states quarreled over control of the Northwest Territory. Remember, under the Articles of Confederation, the states have the most power. Some states, like Virginia, claimed large parts of the territory. In fact, Virginia claimed most of the Ohio River Valley, but so did Pennsylvania. The Northwest Ordinance divided this huge territory into smaller territories. The people who lived in a territory could apply for statehood, could be equal with all the rest of the original 13 colonies that became the first states, when the population reached 60,000. So it wouldn't be fair for Michigan, having 2,000 people, to have all of the rights and responsibilities as New York, which had 1 million people at the time, probably. That's off the top of my head. You might want to look it up if you're really into the details. The point is, New York had many more people than Michigan at the time, so it wouldn't be fair if Michigan is just starting to get settled for Michigan to have equality with the rest of the states. But when there were enough of people here, then Michigan became a state. Statehood means to become a state, you think. The ordinance did not allow an existing state to claim any part of the new territories. So Virginia and Pennsylvania and these other states had to give up saying that this land belonged to them. Under the British, the Northwest Territory had been set aside for Native Americans. Now thousands of United States citizens began moving into the area. Many arrived in covered wagons with all their belongings. They were coming for the promise of land. A lot of the people settling in the Northwest Territory to start with had fought in the Revolutionary War, and then the men went home and the United States decided it would be easiest to pay them for fighting in the war by giving them land. And so in order to claim that land, they had to pack up their families and go settle. So to control settlement of the Northwest Territory, Congress divided the land into townships of 6 square miles each. Each township became a self-governing part of the territory. The Northwest Ordinance gave new settlers in the territories the same rights that citizens had in the 13 states. The Northwest Ordinance also outlawed slavery. It made slavery illegal in those states. And it made it so that you couldn't hire indentured servants. An indentured servant was someone who signed a paper and said, I will work for you for 7 years, and all you have to do is feed me, give me 2 sets of clothing a year, and that's pretty much all you got to do for me. So they made that illegal. In addition, the ordinance required that each township set aside land for public schools. Members of Congress believed that if people were going to govern themselves, they had to be educated. All right, so that gives you some background on the Northwest Ordinance. This then is your assignment. There is information here at the top, and you will very much want to pay close attention to this section here that sets out in more detail the steps that it took to become a state. So there are steps in order. This happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So down here at the bottom, it wants you to number the states in the order that they were left into the United States. Start with 1 for the first state. How can you figure that out? Well, you notice how there are dates here? It would probably make sense if you figure those are the dates that those states became states. The Northwest Territory also included part of a present-day state not labeled on the map. So this will be helpful to look at this map because this one is in color in order to help you figure out, all right, where is there part of something that's a state but it's not named here? It wants you to write the name of that state where it belongs and then use a bright color to outline the entire area of the Northwest Territory. That should be easier looking at this map. Label the Great Lakes in and around the Northwest Territory. So your Great Lakes, it wants basically all of them. So label them. Use a dark color. I am going to say not just a dark color, make it blue. To trace the 2 major rivers that were part of the western and southern boundaries of the Northwest Territory. If you have a hard time figuring out where west and south are, they've given you a compass rose. Now you get some questions, and you'll notice there are a couple of lines for each questions. This one, which 2 major rivers formed the western and southern boundaries? The blank river formed the western boundary. The blank river formed the southern boundary. You don't have to rewrite that it's the Northwest Territory, but I do want you to get these ideas that these rivers are forming the boundaries. Number 2, when was a territory eligible for statehood? In other words, what facts had to be true in order for a place to be considered able to be a state? I see several things that come before being able to be eligible to be a state. You should refer back to the front. A territory was eligible for statehood when? Don't forget to spell things correctly when they're right there on the paper for you. And then you have to finish that thought, put a period at the end. Under the Northwest Ordinance, who or what approves a territory's proposed constitution before the territory can become a state? So when you're looking on the front, you would want to look for the word Constitution. And once you find that, make sure you're in the spot that is talking about approving the Constitution. Blank approves a territory's proposed constitution before the territory becomes a state. So you would use all the rest of this sentence in your answer. Number 4, look at the map and find the first territory to become a state. Why do you think this part of the Northwest Territory was the first to reach statehood? If you need to look back in the book for a reference page to think more about why that state might be first, we don't want to go back too far, you will want to look in page 273. So page 273, if you don't have any idea. Even if you think you do have an idea, it's a good thought to go back to 273 anyhow. It is asking you why you think. I think blank was the first state because, and then you have to finish that idea. And then, how was the process in which the Northwest Territories became states different from how the 13 colonies became states? So the easiest way to do this, 13 colonies became states by, and if you don't remember, you might want to go back and listen to the beginning of this video. But it should be pretty clear. And then the next part, you write Northwest, and yes, you may abbreviate, territories became states by. Photograph of both sides of that sheet of paper will be your homework for today. Thank you.